Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
This is a catastrophe.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
That's what I wished for when I blew out my candle.
Locking down the middle of the day, live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. This is Hunt Palmer.
The floor is yours.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday. It means we're brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Fired up you are with us. About half the work week in the rearview mirror. Let's get things moving here. We got a lot to do over the next 2 hours. Mike Casazza from 24/7 Sports covers West Virginia. He'll join us in 15 minutes. That's usually Koki Riley's spot. We bumped Koki back to 2 o'clock today. I want to talk about Whit Weeks' conversation this morning with Jake and Matt on Off the Bench. It's What If Wednesday. Got a lot of those on Twitter. If you're just filed into the Bayou 4 chat, we'd love to hear from you for What If Wednesdays coming up at the bottom of this hour. So plenty to do. Lock us in. Let's get started the way we do every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
All right, I want to talk College World Series odds to start here. It feels like a nice time to settle in and do that. We've reacted to a crazy regional weekend, both in Baton Rouge and, of course, nationally. In the next segment, we're going to start talking about West Virginia, so we're going to move into that. But there are odds published for the College World Series. And before we even get into whether we shouldn't be talking about the first game that LSU plays in Omaha when they still got to win 2 games this weekend, I know. I was in the ballpark for Coastal. I was in the ballpark for Stony Brook. I've seen them lose to Houston. I got it. Like, I understand that there's a lot of work to be done before LSU wins a national championship with this team. I also understand that there are some issues on this team that are going to have to resolve themselves over the next 3 weeks if LSU is going to get there. But as I've said many times, in this market about that program, we're going to talk about championships. We're going to talk about things that we see in March and April that could prohibit them from winning a championship or enhance their chances, because that's the standard on Nicholson Drive at Alex Box Stadium. Like, your standard is get a national seed, get to Omaha, and go do some work. So that's what we're going to talk about, since that's the standard. And so the question is, are they the favorite? Well, if you look at sportsbetting.ag, we've got a story up at louisianasports.net right now that's got the odds. Yes, LSU is plus 350. They're 5-2 to win the national championship. That is the betting favorite. Arkansas is 4-1. Tennessee is 5-1. Those are the top 3. And then you got North Carolina at 7-1, Auburn and Oregon State at 10-1. I think this makes a lot of sense, and I'll tell you why. One of Arkansas and Tennessee is going home this weekend. I would call that a clean toss-up of a super regional. I think Tennessee is scary offensively and has the best pitcher in that series in Liam Doyle. I think Arkansas is scary at bomb. That lineup is great, and there's talent in that pitching staff. But only one of those teams is getting to Omaha. And then you've got LSU, who is a big favorite because of what they've done this year at the box. LSU has not lost a weekend at Alex Box Stadium this year. So those two supers are paired. And whoever wins that first game, should LSU get through West Virginia, and whoever comes out of Baum Stadium this weekend, that will either be Cade Anderson against Liam Doyle in Tennessee, or Cade Anderson against Zach Root from Arkansas. And the winner of that game, which I believe will be Saturday night in Omaha. There are 4 games in the opening round, 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday. In my opinion, LSU, should they get there, and Arkansas and Tennessee's winner will be the primetime Saturday night last game of the first 2 days. Same thing with LSU and Tennessee with Paul Skeens on the mound 2 years ago. So it'll be Saturday night. The winner of that game is, in my opinion, the favorite to win the College World Series if we got there. So I think that as far as taking bets, that makes a ton of sense. You look at the other side of LSU's bracket in Omaha. meaning not the other side of the bracket totally, that you have to get to the championship series to see the other side of the bracket in Omaha, because there are 2 4-team brackets, right? Well, what's left of that? It's UTSA, it's UCLA, it's Murray State, it's Duke. That's it. And none of those teams, which I believe all are quality baseball teams, are scary with Anthony Ianson on the mound. Do you feel good with Anthony Ianson against UTSA? Feel good with Anthony Ianson against UCLA? Feel good with Anthony Ianson against Murray State, Duke? I know all those teams scored nice wins over the weekend. UTSA went into Austin, didn't lose a game, beat Texas twice. Duke went to Athens, beat Georgia. Murray State had to hold on for dear life, but they got rid of Ole Miss in front of a great crowd at Swayze Field. Like, I'm not dismissing completely any of them. Do I think LSU with Anthony Ianson on the mound is better than all of them? Yeah, I do. Now, that first game's going to be tough. And LSU, when you get to Omaha, is going to have to use more pitchers than just Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson and Kason Evans. Like, you're going to have to do some things. Right now, I wouldn't feel super awesome chucking down 100 hard-earned bucks on LSU to win the College World Series at plus 350. I've got real concerns. I feel good about LSU this weekend without knowing a ton about West Virginia yet. We're going to talk to Mike Casazza in the next segment about West Virginia. And tonight, my assignment is I'm going to get shoulder deep in West Virginia baseball for Thursday and Friday's show. I'll know as much as I can know. I feel good about this weekend. Before I do that, the matchup with Arkansas and Tennessee is concerning, even with Cade Anderson on the mound, because Doyle's a freak show and Arkansas's lineup's very scary. I know that LSU's played those 2 teams. They've won 4 of 6 games. That's great. I like LSU's team. But I think that it's fair to handicap LSU, Arkansas, and Tennessee as the top 3. And I think it's fair that LSU's first because they don't have to play Arkansas or Tennessee, vice versa, this weekend. You look at the other side of the bracket completely, and that's where you start to get some of these odds. North Carolina is on the other side completely. Auburn's on the other side completely. Oregon State's on the other side completely. Florida State's on the other side completely. Coastal Carolina is on the other side completely. Then you get to LSU's side of the bracket with UCLA and Duke and UTSA and West Virginia. They're all the lower ones. So what Vegas is telling you, and I realize Vegas isn't necessarily handicapping the baseball teams as much as they're handicapping the betting market. And they know that LSU is massively public and Tennessee is massively public over the last 4 years, and Arkansas is going to be massively public, and UTSA and Arizona and Miami are not going to be that way. They're not going to take a huge handle on this anyway, but there's something to the fact that there are more people that if they're just at a window and there's stuff open or they're just pulling up a site, like more people are going to go, oh, LSU, they're probably really good. I might will win on that. More people are going to do that than go, oh, how about Duke? Like that's not how people are going to think. So there are a lot of layers to this, but I think that for me, handicapping college baseball, paying attention to college baseball the way that I do, when I look at how this is breaking, and I told you this on Monday before they played Little Rock, it looks pretty favorable to me. It looks pretty favorable as far as the draw goes. I think West Virginia is good, not great. Again, I'm going to learn more about them tonight. I think you get to put your ace out there with whatever bullpen guys you want to throw against Tennessee and Arkansas in that first game in Omaha, whoever comes out of there. And then you've got some sort of combination of UTSA, UCLA, Murray State, or Duke in the second game. And you've got Anthony Ianson going. And LSU's going to be a big favorite in that game with any of those guys going. Duke doesn't have an ace. Murray State's low on pitching. UTSA looks good. Are they ready to go to Omaha, win 2 games in a row to start things? And UCLA, I'm a little down on the West Coast talent. I think a lot of it's flown over here to the Southeast. But anyway, like speaking of flying to the Southeast, Anthony Ianson, West Coast guy, flown to the Southeast. And we know that once you win those first 2 games, you've got a really good chance. Now, LSU has blown that whole thing up in 2017 and 2023 because they lost game 2 and then came out of the loser's bracket and won 3 straight in both instances to get to the championship series. So it can be done, but it's hard. So from a handicapping perspective, from a betting perspective, LSU's probably where they should be at the top of this thing. We know the warts on this LSU team. We know the concerns with the pitching staff beyond your two aces. We know the concerns that the offense can be a little bit inconsistent. We know the concerns, but everybody's got some concerns. Tennessee lost 6 of 7 series at the end. They lost a game this weekend to Wake. Arkansas had its bumps in the road, lost 3 series in a row. They've had some injury issues on the mound. But those are probably the teams that I think are the biggest threat. Now, North Carolina looked great over the weekend. You light up Kyson Witherspoon, I'm watching. And Auburn's played really good most of the season. I think Florida State's 1-2 punch, and it's on the other side of the bracket, is excellent. And if they could get to Omaha, I think there's a good chance they could get into the winner's bracket. But I like those 3 teams, and they're going to potentially match up unless West Virginia blows this thing up this weekend in the first game. And really, that's when you'll see the odds move. After that game is played, all of a sudden, you're going to have you'll have a team that's minus probably to win the title after LSU, Arkansas, and Tennessee settle that first game on what I believe will be Saturday night in Omaha. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't know when they're going to play in Omaha, I'm comfortable, not confident, comfortable telling you that LSU, should they beat West Virginia twice, will play on Saturday night in Omaha. They could put them on Friday night. They're not putting them at Friday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I don't think they're putting them at Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But if you've got Cade Anderson and Liam Doyle, LSU and Tennessee, the last 2 national champs, and the College World Series has a choice of who to put in the primetime slot, that's going to be it. So that's the way they did it with LSU and Tennessee 2 years ago, and I think that's what they'll do this year. We'll see, but we'll cross that bridge very gladly when we get to it. That's a look at the betting odds for LSU and the College World Series. That's our Genesis opening drive. When we come back, Mike Casazza is going to join us to talk some West Virginia baseball next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. You know, when I talk about renovations, remodels, you think about just a new expenditure to really jazz up an existing spot. But maybe it's necessary and not elective. Maybe your bathroom is aging, the shower's not functioning properly, sink's not functioning properly, there's mildew or mold, there's rusting, or you got to get new stuff. Don't just call the guy down the street that you're going to pay cash and just think, he'll figure it out. Get David Duvall and his team, who've been doing this for 30 years. They're licensed, bonded, insured, to come in and do your bathroom renovation. You don't have to call anybody else. It's one phone call to one contractor. He handles it from start to finish. And I can promise you this, he's going to do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's David Duvall and One Bath and Closets. Go check out their website. Get a free consultation. That part doesn't cost you anything. David will talk to you about the process and how to work through it, and you will be thrilled with the result in the end. It's One Bath and Closets. Find them online, onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
Wednesday show is brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. Looking to put in the pool of your dreams? You can do it. Contact my friends at Renaissance Homes and Pools, built by Renaissance.com, built by Renaissance.com. LSU won the Baton Rouge Regional on Monday. West Virginia claimed the Clemson Regional over the weekend. They are headed to Baton Rouge for the Super Regional round. Winner headed to Omaha for the College World Series. Mike Casazza covers West Virginia for EAR Sports, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Mike, appreciate the time. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It was a fun time of year.
It is absolutely a fun time of year. We're very much looking forward to the weekend. I was checking out y'all's site earlier today, and you wrote a story talking about the revenues and expenses for West Virginia and LSU. And obviously, we understand LSU's got a pretty rich baseball tradition, but West Virginia's had a really good 3-year run here, and is obviously not some sort of mid-major program. So are you and the Mount fan base kind of looking at this as a little bit of a David versus Goliath here?
A little bit. It's a significant gap in those revenues and expenses. I knew it would be big. I was surprised that, like, for example, LSU's ticket revenue was larger than West Virginia's entire revenue. And that seems like a small thing, right? Big stadium, a lot of home games. You're coming off a national championship from the reporting here, so okay, that makes sense. But that's a lot of money for just one expense. And if West Virginia is charging for this and that and can't even get close to what LSU gets for just tickets, you kind of get a glimpse into easy is not the right word, but how accessible dollars are for one program versus another. And it's been better for West Virginia in recent years than it was a long time ago or even a couple of years ago. But I think when you look at what powers winning teams now, it's money by and large, whether it's a transfer portal or this arms race and facilities. And they're really playing catch up. Although I will say they have like a state-of-the-art biometrics performance center that they didn't pay a dime for. It's like a multi-million-dollar best in the country facility, and they got for free. So there's certain ways to spend without having to spend your own money.
They certainly had a wonderful first 10, 12 weeks of the regular season. Were in complete control of the Big 12, which they ended up winning, even though they limped to the finish line there. What was so good about West Virginia for the first 12 weeks of the regular season?
They just had this like devil-may-care attitude. You know, first-year coach who's really popular, and I think they wanted to make it happen for him. And then I think, unlike a lot of teams that you see early in the season, that they'll mess around with their lineups. They'll give young kids starts on the mound or in the field, or they'll maybe do platoons or rotations. They, by and large, are the same 1 through 9 in the batting order, small deviations. Their starting rotation was the same for the first, I want to say, 12 weekends of the year, which is kind of unheard of. And their midweek starters, they still had a plan. You know, they would have an opener go 1 to 2 innings, maybe a pitch count, and they kind of followed in order after that. So they really hit a groove early, and they weren't changing anything along the way. So it was kind of a confluence of events, you know, consistency, the production, and they didn't have to search for answers. All the answers were there, and they started. So that helps. But just to get what you're getting at here, they were 13-0 to start.
Yeah. They
don't play a home game until like late February, early March. So they're 13-0 on the road. That's a significant thing here. I don't know if everybody gets that. Northeast baseball, you don't get to practice very much. They don't have an indoor facility, or they didn't. And you're on the road against Southern teams, or you're at invitationals in the Carolinas or Georgia, either playing against the team or playing in a field with teams that have been outside and practicing for weeks and months at this point. And that's just a disadvantage for them that for multiple reasons they were able to overcome this year. And that's really why they were what they are at the end, because, you know, had the Big 12 season unfolded the way it did, still healthily over 500, but to be so far above 500 in non-conference play, that really made the record look good and kind of helped them in the the RPI, which needed help because the strength of the schedule wasn't great.
Sure, and they won a ton of baseball games until the last stretch where they lost 5 of 6 in the league. Was there something you could point to in the last 2 weekends of conference play that was a bit of a bugaboo?
Yeah, the 5-alarm fire in the bullpen.
Okay.
That was a problem. If you get out of their starting pitching, they have a real hard time bridging to the reliable pitchers. And it became such a problem that they were using the reliable pitchers probably too often. And if you just look at, you know, guys, you can look at this up yourself here, Carson Estridge, Reese Basinger, guys like that who pitch a lot for them. Well, when they pitch a lot, it just adds up. And they became, instead of outings, kind of high leverage situations. And everybody, even in the midweek games, was really trying to beat them. So you're facing the best of everybody, which I'm assuming in your neck of the woods, very accustomed to that. A new thing here, where every non-conference game is packed for a rival or because it's West Virginia. The home games were really crowded, kind of raucous events. So home or away, everything was kind of pressure-packed. And you squeeze a little harder and you throw a little harder and you just wear down a little bit. And, you know, some of their main guys, as they got up in innings and appearances, started to slow down for them a little bit. The pitches were flatter, they weren't as fast, and they were getting hit around, and just never had a guy that could answer it. And then, unfortunately for them, they just had some injuries that they haven't gotten all the way out of yet either.
We're chatting with Mike Casazza, who covers West Virginia for 24/7 Sports. The starting pitching has been a strength, and Griffin Kern has kind of been the front of that rotation. I can look at him on the stat sheet, 95 innings, 100 strikeouts, and an ERA just a hair over 3. But what can you tell me about Griffin Kern, the pitcher?
He's a classic lefty. A little bit weird when it comes to the rotation, the routine before pitches. You watch him, it's a lot of herky-jerky stuff and trying to like make sure everything from the hips up is in the right spot. but it's the same every pitch. It just wears me out to watch it. I wonder what it's like to actually be the guy doing that. But he's a left-handed guy that will, run the ball, has some good heat. And, you can say what you want about stuff and spin rate, velocity, and all that. He's really competitive. He's just a guy that came from Division II and thought he was better, and he was. And he went to the Cape back-to-back summers and didn't get a great run the first time and was mad about it, and then just took it upon himself to provide the resources for himself that you don't get in Division II. And he's going to pitching coaches and strength coaches and getting acupuncture. And then he goes to the Cape the second time and lights it up. And the West Virginia's like, we got something here. And they bring him in, they give him the ball on Fridays the entire season. He hasn't missed a start. He's gotten quality outings most of the time. A couple no decisions for bad luck because of the bullpen. And that happens sometimes to this team. But just what he means to them. He threw 118 pitches in the first game of the regional, and he came out and he closed the third game of the regional. That's one thing about arm strength, but that's also the value he is to the team, is that they were in trouble. How are they going to get 27 outs? And he said, I got 3 more for you. And he gave it to him.
That's impressive stuff, and certainly something you see at times in regional play. LSU used Anthony Ianson on Friday, and then he came back and finished the deal on Monday. After Kern in the second game of this Super Regional, who would you expect to see West Virginia start?
That'll be Jack Cartzonis, who's an older guy who's had some arm troubles in the past at Kent State. And then, in fact, when he transferred here, they knew he needed arm surgery. Nothing major, not Tommy John or anything reconstructed, but they had to have his arm fixed because he was just pitching through major, major pain last season. So a bit of a risk, but they knew him from high school. He was pitching in Pittsburgh in high school, which is kind of a spot that has to be around for recruiting, and just got their eyes on him. And when they got him here, they had a plan. Here's a guy who throws a hard sinker that runs and dips and gives people problems. So it's not going to be a ton of fatigue in his arm, but they eased him into things. And then right about the final third of Big 12 play, they made him a starter. And he was lights out. He ended up being second team all conference, just in a third of a Big 12 season. And he gives them innings. And again, just an older guy who has pitched a lot. And then, he got up some midweek action at Kent State, which is oftentimes against your high major competition. So he's not new to this. Just seems like he's a guy who's kind of comfortable with this and who understands that as an older person. He's got to be cool and calm and on there on the mound. But when he's going, that sinker runs away and you get some weird swings and a lot of ground balls on it. But, he had a rough outing in the Big 12 tournament and then bounced back and had 5.1 pretty strong innings against Clemson in the regional. Probably got the hook too fast because the bullpen kind of did him in. And I think they'll let him run as long as he can go on the second game.
Let's talk about offense. This West Virginia team, what would you say the identity is of the offense and maybe a player or two that Tiger fans should be on the lookout for?
It's a little bit new. They put 2 new starters in against, in the regional. And they're both left-handed batters, and they face Kentucky's left-handed pitcher, Cleaver. So that was a bit of a risk. Now, one, they had no choice. Their ordinary first baseman's a lefty. The backup is a lefty. But the backup that they started was 4 for 32 during the season. And he ends up getting 3 big hits in the final 2 games and driving in 5 runs. He actually put down a sacrifice bunt in the first game with a bat recoiled and hit him in the face. So he's kind of opened eyes and kind of proven himself to teammates in the postseason for what maybe he didn't do or have during the regular season. That's Ben Lumsden, kind of a power guy when he gets it. Pretty good athlete, not a great fielder, but had some clutch 2-strike, 2-out hits. And then really the guy to watch for, I'm not just cherry picking new players here, but the second new starter was Armani Guzman, who just didn't play this year for different reasons. They had an injury that kept him from playing the outfield and moving an outfielder to the DH. So their DH has been the same for 27 straight games. And again, they don't mess their lineup very much, like I was saying. But Guzman came in and was the MVP in the regional, was 8 for 12, and that followed a 2 for 2 in the Big 12 tournament. And it was just kind of a gut hunch thing by the manager who saw him, getting good ABs and batting practice in their practices, and saw him messing around at shortstop and third base, which he played in high school, but he was a corner outfielder this year when he played. And they said, "Can you play third?" And he said, "Yeah." And they put him in there, and he played flawless third base and was their best player. And they think he's like a pro eventually, if not, before you know it. And then if they get going, the middle of their lineup can be tricky. Logan Saab is probably a pro prospect at catcher. He'll probably get drafted this year if he goes. and he kind of tailed a little bit because their DH, who they've had to start at DH, is their backup catcher. So the DH has had 27 straight games as DH. That means their catcher's had 27 straight games as catcher, and that adds up late in the season. But he started swinging a good bat and has some pretty elite offensive ability when he gets going, and that seems to be back, and that's Logan Salve.
You mentioned a little bit earlier, and this is the last one. We appreciate a lot of your time. You mentioned about the environment and the pressure late in the season in the Big 12. How do you think this group will handle Alex Box Stadium over the weekend?
They were the home team for 2 of the games in the Clemson Regional. They were the visitor for the Clemson game. Have you seen the Clemson game on TV?
I have.
That bullpen is right next to the fans.
Yep.
It's not in the outfield. It's on the third baseline. It's obnoxious. And I think that was something that kind of got them maybe a little bit spooked at first, and their bullpen wasn't good in parts of that game. And you could say causation correlation for sure there. But I think that, playing in front of like 9,100 people in a hostile territory there, that's a big deal. And they did okay there in those clutch situations. They came back in all 3 games. That said, nothing like Baton Rouge. They know that. I don't think they'll be stunned. I don't think they'll be intimidated. I don't think that they can possibly be ready for what they're going to get when they, first inning, first time the other team scores, the first time they're down 2 runs. But it's a pretty, I don't know, they've been through some rough stuff at the end of the year. I think they can kind of step back and be like, well, here we go again. We can make up a 4-0 deficit. We can have a 6-run inning. And maybe they can't do 6 runs against some of those pitchers, but they've been behind the 8 ball a couple times, and I think they're prepared to be outnumbered about 1,000 to 1 here. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they just moved the bullpens at Alex Box Stadium this year, and the visiting one is about 8 feet from the fans. So at least they got some experience.
Oh,
at least they got some experience at Clemson. It's the same deal right down the third baseline, and the fans are right up against where they warm up. So yeah, I think that was by design.
Question.
Yes.
Can you sell beer at the ballparks in the regionals? Because I know in NCAA championships events you can't. My observation on TV, there were some very festive people in the stands at Clemson. I don't know how they got that way. Maybe they arrived that way. Maybe they bought pops in the stand. I don't know.
I can answer that question. Yes, you can. And I can promise you, I don't know if West Virginia is going to win 2 games this weekend, 1, none, LSU win 2. I don't know. There will be plenty of people in a very festive mood with plenty of alcohol in the stadium this weekend. That much I can promise.
This is how it should be, because the single game sales record for beer in the football stadium, and West Virginia was one of the first football stadiums to sell beer, was the LSU game with Tyrann Mathieu and kickoff return touchdown. So, yeah, this is made to be, right? Yeah,
2011. I was there in the press box. So, yeah, I recall it very, very well. Mike, we appreciate some time. Enjoy the baseball this weekend. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
He's Mike Casazza. He is with 24/7 Sports covering West Virginia. Yeah, look, again, I don't know what's going to happen this weekend as far as wins and losses, but I can promise you that ballpark's going to be on springs. So I'm very, very much looking forward to getting back there. I'll be honest, and I think a lot of you can probably relate with this. Maybe you can't, but a lot of you probably can. I was exhausted yesterday. After those 4 nights at the box, I was asleep in my bed at 9 o'clock. For reference, the 3-year-old goes down at about 8:40. I was down at 9 o'clock. And my wife had the light on and had the TV on, and I was asleep. So, I was just out of gas last night. But there'll be a lot of folks that are ready to roll come Saturday at 2 o'clock. So, thanks to Mike for giving us a little bit of time. It's What If Wednesday coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
Wednesday shows brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. Do business with a local company. Renaissance Homes and Pools. Joey Blanchard, been here for decades. I'm going to give you Joey's cell at the end of this read. So if you're thinking about a pool, get your phone out and get ready for the cell phone number. But Joey is incredible to work with because, 1, he's the owner of the company. 2, he's going to be there every step of the way. He's got some incredible software. You sit down at the computer and you just get to designing that pool. If you've got a ton of ideas, throw them at Joey. He'll get them put right there in front of you. If you don't and you just like to talk about it and let him go off of experience and some of the great projects that they've done and y'all can work together to get that done, you can do it. But it's not too late for this year to get started on getting that pool built. It's hot around here till Halloween. So call Joey and get that process started today. He's going to be with you start to finish, from the design to the digging to the installation to the finishing. It's all going to be there with Joey Blanchard at Renaissance Homes and Pools. Pools, outdoor kitchens, outdoor areas, they got you covered. Give Joey a call at 225-252-7745. That's 225-252-7745. BuiltByRenaissance.com. All right, let's play some What If Wednesday.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question. What if?
All right, first one here. What if Paul Mainieri and the LSU Tigers won the national championship in 2021? Do him and Woodward reconsider Mainieri retiring, quote?
It's an interesting question. He announced, if I'm not mistaken, right before the postseason, right? It was right before the regional when they went up to Eugene, and then they won. They went, and so if they don't, I don't think that he would have been like, oh no, we won, I'm back. I think he probably rides off into the sunset. Now you know now that there was still a fire there for him to. So, Coach, he just wasn't in a spot to do it. And that's an interesting question because they were playing pretty good there in the regional, and then they went and ran into a buzzsaw in Tennessee in the Super. But I think that once you say you're going to retire on June, just be hypothetical first, and then you come back 3 weeks later, like, just kidding, we won, I'm back. I don't think that would happen.
Yeah, in fact, I think it might have made it even easier for him to retire.
And I don't think he'd be in South Carolina if that had happened either.
No, I don't think so.
That's just my guess.
All right, next one here. What if Sam Dutton had stayed at LSU?
Interesting question too. This is a thing that I'm kind of hung up on right now. Is I'm just disappointed that LSU has been unable to find a third starter really ever. And I'm fully aware that that's a rarity in college baseball to have a true third starter that always goes out there and takes the ball and gives you, 6 good innings, 5 good innings. Just teams don't generally have that. But LSU hasn't, and I feel like LSU should be able to get that. And Chase Shores flops, or Thatcher Hurd can't get it done. It's just like it hurts. And I don't know if Sam Dutton would be the same pitcher today that he is in Auburn, in Baton Rouge. I don't know if he needed a fresh set of eyeballs, which Thompson's a great pitching coach. They may have done something different. Maybe he just got a longer leash in Auburn than he did at LSU, where he's always pitching like 1 inning as an opener. I don't know, but if they had a 1-2-3 right now of Cade Anderson, Anthony Ianson, and Sam Dutton, yeah, they'd be the favorite to win the national championship because he's pitching great, but it just didn't work as well here, and I'm not sure why.
All right, next one. What if we have LSU, that is, have a 1-run lead going to the 9th on Saturday, and Anderson is well over 100 pitches? I guess let's just say he's coming out.
He's coming out of the game.
Because I could see a scenario where they keep letting him go after 100. But yeah, anyways, let's just say, for instance, that Anderson has to come out. Who gets the ball in the 9th?
I'm going to go off of Jay Johnson's answer to my question yesterday. I think Zach Cowan gets the ball. And I think that there is reason for an LSU fan to think that's incredibly risky. I also think that Kason Evans pitched a lot of pitches on Monday. How does he feel on Saturday? That would be different for him. I'm not telling you who I would give the ball to. I'm telling you that I believe that Jay Johnson will give the ball to Zach Cowan. That's how I perceived his answer yesterday. He said he could not have more confidence in him, and the outing wasn't exactly what they were looking for yesterday, and that's obviously 4 out of 5 that haven't been great. But I think that's what the answer is.
All right, next one. What if LSU had gotten to 20 SEC wins, and now look at the pairing that they would have in the Supers, like Arkansas having to play Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible they could have jumped Arkansas there. I'll tell you how the team sheets work, and that's they get sheets on every team. I don't know if it's a hard copy, if it's just something on their TV screen or whatever, or computer screen, but the selection committee gets a sheet for every team. And the conference record absolutely, without caveat, includes what you do in the conference tournament. That is literally on your sheet. So LSU's conference record this year in the conference play was 19-11, and they went 1-1. So when the committee got their sheet, LSU was 20-12 in league play. So maybe they go up a tick on Arkansas. Maybe the RPI is a little bit better, but Arkansas's metrics were stronger than LSU's and across the board, except for the head-to-head. So, I'd rather play West Virginia than Tennessee. I can promise you that. Would I rather play Tennessee at home as opposed to playing them in Omaha? Maybe we'll have that different discussion. But for this weekend, LSU, it worked out because I don't think West Virginia is great, not knowing as much as I'm going to know tonight when I really do a lot of research.
Alrighty, next one. What if LSU had decided to pitch off against Little Rock on Friday like many fans wanted them to do?
Well, it starts with who do you pitch, and if you say it's Jaden Newt, well, he went out there against Little Rock and got knocked around, couldn't throw as many strikes, and then you went to the bullpen there, and you didn't have a lot of guys that did the job. Shores didn't look good, and you all of a sudden got behind the 8-ball and you got crushed. So, LSU scored 7 runs on Friday. Would that have been enough? I don't know. It's a great what if. It's a really reasonable question. My gut tells me they probably find a way to get it done, but it probably includes, Case and Evans pitching in that game. And maybe they get it over more quickly that way because you go with Anderson and Ianson. I think you would win those 2 games the next 2 days. It's a very reasonable question. The interesting thing is on Thursday when we were talking about who they should pitch, you didn't consider that you would be playing Little Rock on Sunday and Monday. That would never have crossed my mind that a team that had that bad a record would be the team you're playing in the region final. I would have said you were playing DBU on Saturday or Sunday, or potentially Rhode Island, but I would have said DBU. And maybe that looks a little bit different. I don't know. It's a fair question. And the point of the matter is that really what matters is LSU's got to find some people to step up when Anderson and Ianson aren't pitching, whether that's in Friday of the regional, Monday of the regional, Monday of a super, and this weekend, like somebody else has got to step up. Case and Evans did it on Monday, thankfully, but I don't have a rock solid answer for you on what would have happened. It would have been more dicey than Friday ended up being.
Yeah.
And I still contend, I think this is a reasonable take. That when you throw Ianson for 7 2/3 and Anderson for 7 or whatever it was, maybe it was transposed, either way, and they set you up going to Sunday night where everyone else is available, like you need to be able to get the torch home from that point. And I think that's the case every year.
It is, yeah. You always, every single year, when you make it this far and you're playing in these series of extra games where you're going to be going into more than 2 or 3 games usually, you always have to have somebody that you just hasn't really. Somebody has to do something they haven't done all year. We've seen it every single time LSU makes it to Omaha, makes it this far. There's always got to be somebody that steps up, and this Case and Evans did it this time. So we'll see who does it. Maybe in the supers or of course Omaha. You're absolutely going to need guys to step up. So
no question. All right, that's it for What If Wednesday. When we come back, I'm going to give you a segment. It's only going to be about 5 minutes, but it has nothing to do with this coming weekend. It has everything to do with what's coming in 51 weeks from now, 52 weeks from now. So if you can retain that information for an entire year, it'll be worthwhile. If you can't, well, I'll have to do it again next year. But that's the plan for the end of this hour. We'll do it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is the website. Every car that is on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Every single new Genesis purchase, 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. 10 years. It's a long time to have a car under warranty. How about 3 years of complimentary maintenance? Valet complimentary maintenance. These are part of the perks of driving a Genesis. It's a luxury brand at a reasonable price. When I say luxury, don't automatically start looking at different brands in your head and going, well, I can never drive that. Try. Check them out online, genesisofbatonrouge.com. Go see them, airline at PQ. Talk to them. Look at the fine vehicles they've got in that inventory and look at the price tag. It may surprise you. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Stop by airline at PQ or visit them online, genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
So you do this long enough, which I have not done it long enough, but I'm acquiring years as they go by, and I'm realizing that the calendar often looks very similar, and we talk about this at this time of year, and this at this time of year, and this at this time of year, and I'm starting, and I feel like I remember a lot of the things that I say, not everything, but a lot of things that I say, and one of the things that I'm going to carry with me moving forward, and I'm going to be pretty adamant about, is that when we get to SEC tournament week in baseball, it's a time of year where everyone's is not on pins and needles, that's wrong, but they're very attentive as to what's going on because you're about to play for keeps. You're not in Hoover, but you're about to. So everybody wants to be very reactionary, and that's natural because it's that time of year and you know that the NCAA tournament's coming. And I will say this for sure. You can very much help your resume in Hoover. LSU played their way to a 2 seed in Hoover last year when they were 13 and 17 in the league because they played all the way to the weekend. This year, Bama losing knocked them out of a host, and Ole Miss and Tennessee played their way into hosts. Ole Miss almost played their way up to a top 8. Vanderbilt got the number 1 overall seed because they went and won the tournament. Like, absolutely, you can help yourself resume-wise in Hoover. No question. It's a big week for that. What I do not think you can do, and I'm going to be adamant about this, you cannot draw a straight line from how you played in Hoover to how you're going to play in the regional the next week. LSU was awesome in Hoover last year. And they went and had to get a walk-off home run to beat Wofford's number 2 pitcher. This year, Vanderbilt was just blitzed the field, won the tournament, bounced out of their own tournament, lost to Wright State. Ole Miss, awesome in the SEC tournament, got all the way to Sunday, came out, bounced in their regional, lost to Murray State twice. And you look at how LSU's bullpen performed in Hoover and how those guys pitched against Ole Miss. It was awesome. Came out the next week, bad against Little Rock. And in the same way, in 2024, Tennessee blitzed the SEC tournament field and came out and won the national championship. Sure, can happen. But the year before that, LSU was bad in Hoover and came out and won the national championship. They played great in the regional, great in the super. We know that Ole Miss and Mississippi State were awful in Hoover, went and won the national championship. Like, how you play in Hoover does not impact how you play in the regional. So I'm not going to sit here and ever panic if some pitcher gets knocked around in Hoover or somebody strikes out a few times in Hoover. Like, it's a completely different ballgame the next day. That tournament is 2 things. It's a resume booster, and it's fun to watch as a fan because they start playing baseball at 9 o'clock in the morning. Like, that's it. So if LSU is sitting there with a lot to do, yeah, you better lock in. You better win some games. In the seasons where LSU runs through the SEC and is 21-9 or 20-10 or is 3rd in the RPI when they get to Hoover and has 19 league wins, including 2 series wins over top 5 RPI teams. I'm throwing out hypotheticals, but if you get to Hoover and your time there you're locked in as a top 8 like they were in 23 when they'd gone 19-10 in league play. They had not played a game in South Carolina, so they only had 19 league games, but they were locked in as a top 8. I don't care they played like garbage. Tommy White didn't play. Skeens got pulled early, got hit around, whatever. 2010 LSU team, the year after the national championship, they went and won the tournament. Went out to L.A., faced Trevor Bauer in the second game. They need to walk off to beat Irvine from Trey Watkins. So, like, that's something it's gonna stick with me. I'll remember all of this next year when it comes to this time of year. And somebody will, go 0 for 8 with 4 strikeouts in Hoover, and everybody says, well, this guy's terrible. Like, or this team's not going to do anything. I don't care how you play in Hoover as long as you don't need resume points. And it's borne out not just this year. It's not just Vanderbilt this year, not just Ole Miss this year. It's every year. Some teams are going to play good in Hoover and show up in the NCAA tournament and stink. Some teams are going to be great in Hoover, show up and forget how to hit. Vanderbilt couldn't hit Wright State. They were getting no hit by Wright State 5 days after they had wrecked the Southeastern Conference in Hoover for 4 days. They were getting no hit until they took their pitcher out. So that's something that's going to stick with me. Maybe it'll stick with you for 51 weeks. Maybe it won't, and I'll have to come back and redo this on Monday of next year before the tournament starts. I love the SEC tournament. I love Tuesday morning at 9:30 when they start playing baseball. I love it. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't. Resume boost. Good TV show. Tell you what will matter, the Super Regional. That's coming up on Saturday. Koki Riley will be there. We'll talk with him when we come back after Sports Center, a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.